Hey everybody, welcome back to Terminus, the irreversible of metal journalism. I am the death metal guy, aka Dick caught in a Nightwish A5 steelbook.
And I am the black metal guy, aka Shaking Night Forest of Black Perun.
Black Perun?
Perun.
Perun? I don't know what that means.
Perun. Oh, it's a Slavonic god. He's like Thor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know, you're the college boy here, you know? You gotta help me out occasionally.
I just read black metal titles. That was my...
Yeah, that's fair. Well, you can translate it because you got some background knowledge on all the pagan shit.
I didn't really know about the Slavonic gods until I started digging more into that side of black metal, you know? So,
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Although, it's not even Perun, the one they call the black. I think Veles is this sort of sinister deity, but you know, since when have cool black metal names made sense?
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, we're gonna have plenty of those on the show today. So
True. Mm.
So, Terminus news. You're the one handling it this time. What have we got? We've got some stuff from the outer edges of the greater Terminus co-prosperity sphere today.
Yeah, in news that the black metal guy cares about, it's we've got a new one from Heidens Hart, who I've said before on this show when we covered Meslam Tea are, push comes to shove, probably my favorite underground label operating now. Well, they've been operating for a long time. It's one dude. Core to the Dutch scene, and this is a new release by a band called Azanul. The record is called Var Alchemisten Regen. Maybe that means where alchemists reign.
Something like that.
Yeah. And this guy is connected to a lot of underground projects from long before the contemporary underground emerged. So this is old Dutch black metal project from the Irvish Wiedergeist northward Arvandil circle. I assume that's not French Arvandil. Raw black metal with lots of creative riffs and melodies and good actual songwriting. Band released 2 demos in 2005 and 2009. Now the third demo, written over a period of 15 years, is out. 4 tracks, 22 minutes, good analog sound, recorded in real time on Type 2 Chrome tape for supreme audio quality. And I would just say, if you've been looking to get into the Dutch scene or have heard me talking about it here and are sort of like wondering how that sounds, Azanul is about as good an introduction as you could ask for. There's this, what characterizes the Dutch sound is, you know, there's this, you know, nocturnal kind of Norse Scandinavian sound. There's this solar Southern European sound. The Netherlands have this kind of cold gray, cold gray metal sound, like a sword or something, you know, or the sun on a gray day. And you can hear that here really well. All right, so we're just going to start from the beginning of Vervlucht, track 2.
All right, let's check it out. that's interesting, because even though obviously this is a lot more stripped down in Second Wave, I can definitely hear similar melodic ideas to Meslamtea, so I guess that is just kind of representative of the Dutch sound, which you know much more about than I do.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I mean, but you can instantly tell, right? And
yeah, I know a lot about I know a lot about like the Dutch death and grind scenes, but black metal I'm not very familiar with, apart from what you've told me about.
It's this kind of late afternoon on the North Sea kind of quality. I didn't even realize it, but the cover of this record also has the sun breaking through gray clouds. So there you go. Yeah, and if people are interested in that scene in general, this label's a great place to start. Asgrau, the brother band of Meslamtea, good place to start. Also, Cultus, Kjeld, Standvast. I'm gonna. Untar is really good, and a lot of them are just on this label.
Basically, listen to our episode where we cover Meslamtea, and the black metal guy spends like 10 minutes just running down every black metal band in Holland.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, except for fucking what's that one? The goofy one, that Urfaust, right? Terminus doesn't care about Urfaust. Yeah. Okay. On to a new one from our buds in Sunlight Ward, or my bud in Sunlight Ward, who I've corresponded with on Instagram a bit. He's released some really good kind of... it's a label from New Jersey, and as you can tell the name, it's named after an Amoebics song. But the label is sort of like focuses on black and death stuff from a medieval stenchcore perspective. It's kind of weird. There's like a real concept there. And he's put out some great stuff, in particular by Brett Waldas of Heathen Doom. I'd consider to be kind of the flagship band for that. Mm-hmm. Kind of very earthy wizard crust band from the UK. But now he's doing a tape reissue of Zygote's Wind of Knives. This is coming in winter 2021. And for those of you who don't know, Zygote was the successor band to Amoebics, started by Stig once Rob went away to Skye to forge swords. And Zygote, I think this is an EP. I think they didn't record that much, but it's quite good. And he's basically picking up on the Killing Joke and influence that was already kind of pretty big in Amoebics, and really expanding that. And you can see both how this is very close to a lot of stuff in the early 90s that was big, like Godflesh, and also you can hear why it was didn't catch on with the kids. But this is a great band. So let's start. The track we've got is Here Comes. what did you make of that one, death metal guy?
Well, it's obviously nothing that I would listen to, but it's interesting. It reminds me of it's kind of a left field comparison, but there are a lot of like Finnish death metal bands who broke away from death metal pretty early on to do kind of weird, slightly psychedelic rock music influenced by post-punk and stuff like that, and that's what this kind of occurred to me as being similar to.
Like, interesting. Oh, didn't Sentenced become a goth band? Is that who you're talking about?
I was thinking more of like a Zysma, and there were a couple others that started as like, a couple of them even started as like gore grind bands, and then after their demos very quickly went into sort of like slightly proggish art rock stuff. I think that Gorefest did that to a degree, although they're not Finnish on some of their later records. And Zysma's the one that comes to mind. There's a couple more people who are more familiar, mention it in the comments because they're not bands that I listen to.
Even the name sounds like it. If I saw the name Zysma, I'd think, oh, that's probably a crust band. So there you go. Yeah,
they started as like kind of a Carcass style band, and then very abruptly shifted to doing kind of art rock stuff. And this reminds me a little bit of that. It also reminds me of like a little bit of like early Mr. Bungle stuff, who were always a little bit more informed by goth and post-punk than people realized.
Okay. Some good left field comparisons. And for my part, Stig is, I think, one of the best, one of my favorite guitarists, certainly. And, a thing that a guy what's that blog that's sort of connected to Hessian Firm?
Hate Meditations?
Yeah, Hate Meditations. The guy on Hate Meditations did a smart thing. I don't know that I'd quite put it in this way, but he was basically just like, Amoebics really belongs more in the history of extreme metal than in crust.
I can kind of get where that's coming from. I think it's had a longer lasting kind of first order effect for a lot of metal bands.
Yeah, well, and spiritually, that certainly makes sense to me. There's a difference between what they're doing and some of the stenchcore bands or the other crust bands at the time. But, like, also, like, just in terms, like, it should be appreciated as part of the canon of extreme metal guitar technique. And if people listen more closely to that guy, I think there's still a lot to learn, is where I'm coming from. But, yeah.
Definitely, I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, real quick housekeeping, the usual. If you like our content and you want to be even closer and more intimate with us, one of the best ways to do that is to follow us on social media. You can follow me, the Death Metal Guy, on Facebook at Terminus Podcast, and you can also follow the Black Metal Guy on Instagram at Terminus Extreme Metal. Once again, the Black Metal Guy is far outpacing me in terms of total followers, which is completely unacceptable, as I am truly the heart of this podcast. So we got to balance those numbers out.
I'm its spleen.
But like in the Greek term of the word.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. We'll have a little survey to figure out which of Terminus's humors you are.
If you follow me on Instagram, you should also try to follow the Death Metal Guy at Terminus on Facebook. It's different content, more sort of bizarre shit posting, and there's a whole different set of bands that are more engaged on Facebook than on Instagram.
Yeah, if you want like professional, cool, like well-made shit, go to Instagram. If you want a complete idiot just talking shit when he's drunk, follow us on Facebook. And then additionally, if you're super invested, if there's nothing that you would like to do more than listen to two drunk guys talk about metal for 3 hours at a time, and you want to hear even more of that content, you can do that by subscribing to us on either Patreon or Subscribestar. $3 gets you access to all of the Terminus Prime bonus episodes, and $5 and above gets you access to the Terminus Black Circle, our private Discord server where we argue about old RPGs and share our favorite emo bangers from the 90s.
Yes.
I saw you posted that you got a new emo record. I posted some old emo shit that I just discovered.
This is Screamo. I almost put this in Terminus News, but like this band is gonna, it's pretty off our beaten path. This band's gonna do well. I think they're hooked up in the Screamo scene already. But
gotcha.
we do.
I was talking about an old German Screamo band, Union of Uranus, who you're probably familiar with already. But I discovered them like early this year, and I got really hooked on it.
They must be named after. There's a band from Canada that was pre One-Eyed God Prophecy. I think Union of Uranus is named after a band from Canada or America called Uranus Screamo. Let me see if I can Google this. One-Eyed God Prophecy. Yeah, man, if you haven't heard One-Eyed God Prophecy...
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, well, man, people say Union of Uranus is Canadian.
Are they Canadian? I thought they were German.
Yes.
Maybe it was a German label that their comp came out on.
Yeah, Germans love this shit.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's from the 90s, but it really, presupposes, Screamo sounding more and more like black metal a decade later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. You'd probably dig it a lot. But
yeah, it's adjacent to this band One-Eyed God Prophecy, who is also like that, and who black metal people would really like. So
okay,
cool, good choice.
Okay,
and the new band also that I referenced was Crowning, if you're curious.
All right, I'll definitely have to check that out. But enough emo. We got a real sellout episode for the kids today. We've got 3 big records that you're all probably at least nominally familiar with that we're going to be covering, and only one weirdo, skronky independent release. And this time we got a little mixture. We're not doing the sandwich, and we're not doing the total separation. We're all mixed up today. So the first record we're going to be covering is the debut full-length by Pneuma Hagion, entitled Voidgazer, which is out on Nuclear War Now. Pneuma Hagion is a project that's been around for a few years now, and does, I don't know, let's call it a kind of post-cavern core, but with a very different spin on this record, which we'll talk about at length, because this is not to give away everything too early, but this may be our death metal record of the year. And then second up, what have we got?
It's Goatpenis, Decapitation Philosophy on Nuclear War Now. Obviously,
Yosuke, notice us, please, God.
Yeah, notice us, senpai. So we've got two NWN releases, I guess, is the theme of the first part of the show. What's there to say? I mean, even if this wasn't a prominent war metal band, if I got a promo notice that said it was from a band called Goatpenis, we'd probably cover it. So
definitely.
All right.
And now,
second half, black metal.
Second half. This is, I guess, our black metal half. And first off, we've got our one weirdo, which I discovered, which is the debut full length by Black Horizon Ancient Belial, with a record entitled A Winter Dead Wandering Forever, released cooperatively between Under the Fog Records and Victim Records, which is kind of a whole weird story in and of itself. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but this is a Japanese one-man project playing around with a lot of second-wave melodic black metal ideas, especially indebted to Emperor Satyricon, Dissection, and probably some other weird stuff also. Very interesting small release, and we'll be digging into that. And what's rounding us out? What's, ironically, probably the biggest record of the night.
And finishing out with Inquisition, Black Mass for a Mass Grave, out on Agonia Records. And we just recorded an interview with our buddy Warg in Heretical Sect, and he he said, "Oh, you guys should review some bigger records from time to time." And we're like, "Well, everyone surely wants to know what we think about Inquisition." So,
and this is nice because it kind of redeems Agonia Records for us, because early on in the show we covered the newest Forgotten Tomb and the newest Sentinex that were both on Agonia, and we really didn't like either of those records. So now we get to kind of redeem the label by being like, yes, this is a very good record.
yes. And more, redeem ourselves for the label.
Get back on that promo list. Climb back on that horsey. All right, so let's start the show off with Pneuma Hagion's Voidgazer. So for full disclosure, at the top of the hour, me and R, the main member of Pneuma Hagion, have been friends who have been in contact for probably as long as me and the black metal guy have, for probably about 12 years now.
Dang.
Kind of just on and off. For those who aren't familiar with Pneuma Hagion, R and also his new drummer on this release were members of a very important noise grind band called Intestinal Disgorge, and each of them has about a dozen projects between each member, a lot of which they've collaborated on together. So just to get that out of the way, I'm coming from a biased point, but that being said, I think this, unless something comes out shockingly in December, this is probably the death metal record of the year.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't familiar with the guy and his prior work, it's like, this is pretty undeniable, I think.
Yeah, you said that to me, and then I listened to it, and within 44 seconds, I think I texted you.
Yeah, something like that. It's just like, oh yeah, here we go, we got it. So how would you So I've basically been following Pneuma Hagion since its inception. I remember when R sent me, the first couple tracks that he was working on, and I've basically followed it ever since. But the project has definitely taken some twists and turns over the course of its running, ever since its inception back in 2015. How would you kind of describe this stuff? Because you're not too familiar with the early stuff, right?
No, I had a general idea of how it sounded, but at the rundown, you said that this is kind of like post Cavern Core or something.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Cavern Core is a real word, but real in the same way that Stench Core is, right? It's kind of for those who don't know, it refers to this generation of bands that were really big from probably like 2010 to 2016 or 17, but are still big, that are like kind of incantation, but taken towards this rumbling, atmospheric kind of echoey place. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I mean, you would associate it with bands like Abyssal or Mitochondrion, a lot of stuff that was coming out on Dark Descent Records.
For sure,
at the beginning of the 2010s. Portal, I guess, would be kind of...
It's like the influence of Incantation and Portal, I think, converges to make Cavern Core.
Yeah, basically. And there's some stuff...
Impetuous Ritual is on the more crazy side of it.
Yeah, I think even like Antediluvian got lumped in there a little bit, even though that's not really fair to them. There was some stuff, some good stuff produced from that scene. Like I'm a huge fan of Grave Upheaval, which is sort of the noisiest fringe of that style.
But then you get boring stuff like Grave Miasma.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it just became kind of an aesthetic practice. Now, Pneuma Hagion...
And a guitar tone.
And a guitar tone, yeah.
Pneuma Hagion... what I was going to say, apropos of that, is just that you can hear how it's related via incantation and sounding really heavy, but this is actually really heavy, and it does not have... At this point, there are none of the, quote, atmospheric qualities or black metal-y qualities you'd associate with Cavern Core. Yeah,
that's very true. I was going to say early Pneuma Hagion is in that Cavern Core vein, but much more vital and kind of riff-based than most of those bands were. There was a real investment in as far as what I can determine, both primitive black metal as well as early Morbid Angel, early NYDM a la Incantation and Morpheus Descends, stuff like that. It just happened to have that kind of blown out reverb and delay drenched production. But this record, woo, something was in the water in Texas, because what we've got now is a sort of cavern core meets, and stay with me on this, really extreme beatdown hardcore. Is that a fair assessment, you think?
We are in complete agreement on this.
Yeah, which is fascinating. This is not what I expected from the record at all. And talking about it last night as we were doing our listening and prep for the show, this is something we talked about on some early episodes of Terminus, about when are death metal guys going to start taking beat down seriously. And you had a really interesting kind of thesis about this that I think is worth going into.
So?
Oh yeah, no, I think it's real. I think it's the kind of intellectual discourse our listeners are here for.
All right, we're here for some. Get ready for some discourse. So my theory was sort of like, maybe like, what if you could come up with a rule for how death metal relates to hardcore? That is, like, what if the idea is that death metal sort of depends on hardcore for innovations in rhythmic ideas and song structure, whereas hardcore depends on death metal for innovations in riff form? So, does early death metal, 80s proto-death, does that come from hardcore? Not exactly, but there's a hell of a lot of discharge in it. Right? I mean, and indirectly via Slayer, but sure, something like Possessed or Early Death has more in common with maybe just really gnarly thrash metal. But then when you start to get the classic variants of 92 death metal, you get Sweet Death, right, which is sort of draws on this kind of D-beat thing. Doesn't, still pretty locked into thrash ideas, but it at least has a distinct rhythmic quality to it from the 80s stuff. And the stuff that is most interesting and has had the most legs, I think we both agree, would be the the Florida stuff for sure, but I'm thinking more of NYDM, which incorporates early hardcore, right? And something like Suffocation or Immolation, even. Immolation is sort of rhythmically complex, but that focus on sort of like lurching, low-end, grooving, rippling rhythm. Those are like real musicians working with ideas that come from Cro-Mags. You know what I mean? Not to dismiss Cro-Mags, just to say they were Cro-Mags.
Oh yeah, no. Suffocation was always open about the hardcore influence, and there was a lot of sort of proto-slam stuff that happened in the mid-90s that was fully indebted to early tough guy hardcore. So,
also like Baphomet, right, is a good example of that.
Baphomet, of course, for like the earliest sort of death metal meets Madball stuff. Definitely.
And the point is that this wasn't just really ignorant early 90s death metal. The point is some of the artiest and most sort of long-lived early 90s death metal gets some of its rhythmic freedom from hardcore, right? It helps break out of those thrash structures.
Oh yeah, and this is a great example of a record that is an art record, rather than just a craftsman's record that is using what is considered as very like just ignorant tough guy music as a serious artistic statement, which is probably one of the coolest things about it.
Yeah, so like let's think about, you could keep cycling this through. So then during the later 90s, right, death metal technique feeds into hardcore, right? And the hardcore guys start copying specifically death metal riffs. You can see another cycle of that happening with Xibalba, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Xibalba, No Zodiac, a lot of these kind of bolt thrower influenced hardcore bands.
Entombed, yeah.
Yeah, the HM2 scene, yeah.
So 2010-ish beatdown, right? And then that becomes, as death metal sort of moves towards cavern core and becomes kind of noodly and atmospheric and gets absorbed into black metal, kind of, beatdown remains extremely vital, crushing, heavy, and working at a higher level of abstraction, but more visceral body power than death metal at the overall.
Definitely.
So we've always wondered
what happens when we bring those together in full.
Yeah, and if you want to hear us talk specifically about that, this is something that the death metal guy and I have talked about probably since Xibalba came out. But but we talk about this more in the I think in episode 4 where we review the Años de Inferno, the new Xibalba record.
Still one of the best records of the year. Yeah.
But yeah, so here is Hart beat down structures, feeling back into real death metal, and boy, is it cool.
Yeah, so let's check out what it sounds like when you get the perfect synthesis of those styles together. Let's just listen to the opening minute and a half of the second track on this record, Summoning. Fuck yes! Yes! Fuck, dude. Oh, man. I remember, because I wrote it in the notes, and then you just, you texted me in all caps, how dare you summon me. Oh, man. It's so good. I really like how audible the lyrics are. And the lyrics are just, simple, declarative death metal statements. You know?
I wrote it. Yeah, it's like... There's absolutely, I feel like the early Pneuma Hagion had some, lore and philosophical stuff going on.
Yeah.
This is just distilled to the total fundaments of it. It's just what if instead you just said cool death metal shit?
Well, I think that's the ultimate realization of the philosophy, because a lot of this is it's really influenced by early Gnostic Christianity and stuff like that, which is one of the most metal religious movements ever,
and really influenced by H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, exactly.
It's it's a good example of show don't tell. The quote-unquote stupidity of early 90s death and black metal lyrics is where a lot of the profundity is.
Oh, yeah. It's these are... and also just...
The seemingly incoherent statement, I am the Black Wizards, says a lot.
Oh, no, because it's not incoherent. It only appears to be at first.
Yeah, exactly.
The lyrics give it perfect sensibility.
Yeah.
But musically... Holy shit, we have, some of the most brute, primitive, simplified versions of incantation riffs for the tremolo riffs kind of across this record. It's interesting, there's a few tracks on YouTube showing them recording it in the studio, and the way these tremolo riffs are arranged are so bizarre. Because they're almost like mortician riffs, just meaningless dissonant stuff, but tweaked with all these huge slides and bends, which are kind of derived from Morbid Angel. I'll get into that a little bit later.
I also heard it as like the Xibalba. Xibalba will do these disgusting like low C, low B bends during breakdowns.
Yeah.
Like
the charge up riff. You always talk about the charge up riff. Yeah.
Yeah, things like that for sure, or just like punctuation marks too. And the blast riff there with that sort of rippling bend in it reminded me of one of those, because it's also just this really flabby single string trem. Mm-hmm. Reminded me of that kind of Xibalba thing too, but like sped up, which was cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's also, the other thing that this reminded that we should talk about at some point is like they're not just drawing the rhythmic ideas of the beatdown, which I think we don't even need to talk about. That was a beatdown.
Oh yeah, that's a giant beatdown riff.
It's maybe death metal maybe hardcore absorbed more of death metal guitar tone, which is part of how Xibalba got so heavy. But at this point, death metal is absorbing mega heavy beatdown guitar tone.
Oh yeah. So it's just like, well, this is tuned to G standard, so it is it's almost 8-string tuning. It's a half step above 8-string standard tuning, and it's so grotesque. It doesn't sound like death metal guitar anymore. It's it's so far down in the octave. It's just this alien energy. It's like it just kind of emerges from nowhere.
Well, you know what G stands for? Gangster.
It definitely does on this record. So what have you got? You got a sample here.
Timeless Darkness. This is well, let's just listen to it.
Let's do it.
All right, we're about a little under a minute in.
Sure, let's do it. Dude, I almost punched one of my cats during that.
We should probably release a patrons bonus episode that's just both members of Terminus doing the acapella, doing the vocals to this. The Terminus re-record. Not that we could top that by any means.
The sample literally opens with "I bring disease from other worlds," which is like, isn't that? Yeah, I like how
this just distills every Morbid Angel idea in one sentence.
Yeah, it really does. I love how all the lyrics are done from the perspective of the alien entity rather than like a worshipper like Morbid Angel would do. It's like, no, this is the Lovecraftian nightmare visiting you, and he has a death metal album for you.
It's so confident. Right?
It's so
many. There are black metal bands who occasionally do songs from the perspective of the devil, and it often comes off a little lame. The triumphant example of this, I Am the Black Wizards, although that's not really from the perspective of Lucifer, but maybe kind of, right? But
a demon or something.
Yeah, something like, or a very, very black wizard. But like, there was a lot of like lyrics from the perspective of the devil that are like, I tempt you in lust, I tempt you in sin, you know, my fires of liberation burn, you know, and it's like, ooh, I'm the devil. And
ooh, I'm the devil.
Yeah, exactly. This is just so confident.
It's just like the pure energy of this music. And the fact that, like, I mean, part of the confidence is the fact that most of these songs are, like, under 3 minutes long. The longest track on this record is 3 minutes and 16 seconds. It's just like, the whole record is less than half an hour, which also suggests that, like, beat down heritage to it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it feels so complete, And honestly, it's a hard record to take samples off of, because this is a case where all the songs sound the same in the best way.
Yeah. Oh, I can say one specific thing about the writing, or two specific things about the writing there. First, we opened on I Bring Disease from Other Worlds. That's a little bit like a technique that you showed us on the last show, where we covered Hanging Fortress, which if people like this, that band will interest them too, right?
Yeah.
That's like beat down by way of Tampa. And so this technique's kind of like rolling Morbid Angel riff, but over a high-speed, mid-tempo rolling breakdown,
Yeah.
It just sort of... And it's like a headbang, it's like death metal forgot headbanging.
It kind of did, didn't it? Yeah.
This is, which people complain about that all the time, but like, they complain about it because it's real. It's like, that's a fucking headbanging riff. I also think the blast riffs have this kind of mortician-y thing for sure, but as someone who tries to find the micro differences that make Panzer Division Marduk good and other records not good, I'll say these are really good trem riffs like that. Like, it's just, there's a really, it's that sense of like whiplash quality. He's like moving way up and down the fretboard really fast. There's sort of rhythmic life to it. He's never sitting on a note. So I sure, you're not going to go home singing them, but I think they're extremely effective at a gut level.
Yeah, there's a real elemental quality, which is interesting because, early Pneuma Hagion has more complex riffs than this record a lot of the time. But these riffs really, this might be overdramatic. They're almost establishing a new foundation to build off of, because it's so primal and elemental, and you can see the connections to Incantation and Beatdown Hardcore, but it really is kind of its own methodology. It's kind of establishing its own technique here.
I hear that. It's clearing away the rubble.
Oh, yeah. It's getting rid of, it's really separating the wheat from the chaff in this style of really extreme death metal.
This is kind of what I mean when I talk about being original is about returning to the origin.
Yeah, I get you.
Like, this has tapped into some of the... By stripping away a bunch of the frills, this has tapped into some of those original seed motifs that you get in Morbid Angel and Incantation, and tapped into just some of the original impulse of death metal to just flatten shit, right?
Well, it found...
Yeah.
I said in the notes, like, it found the way to bring Grave Upheaval and Zabalba together, which is something that made intuitive sense to me, but I didn't know how to do it. And this guy figured out how to make it happen.
And to be fair, we had predicted the death metal beatdown crossover, but I don't think we ever expected it to happen with the Cavern Core thing. You know what I mean?
And now that we've heard it, it's like, oh man, this is the fucking way to do it. This is the path forward. So
yeah, what did Cavern Core need? It needed rhythmic life, aggression, headbanging. And what did Beatdown need? It needed blast beats.
Exactly. So let's get to another sample, and then I'm going to get into the Morbid Angel stuff a little bit further.
Oh, yeah.
This is off a track called Febrile Dreams, which I think might be my favorite song on the record. You know? So let's listen to the first couple minutes of this and wait for the riff that goes dun dun squeal. All right, so let's play it from the top. It's like I never, I imagined that it was possible, but I never saw the realization of a crowd kill riff with art behind it. Like there's it's incredible. Like the way he really manages to fuse this, like he gives this like very straightforward body music this immense like artistic output, just because the aesthetic focus of this record is so razor sharp. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's one of the best things in metal, I think, is that razor sharp focus. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's insanely rigorous. But one thing that I wanted to show off was I think a big influence on this record is a death metal album that I think was very influential to the sort of death metal influence beatdown bands, and seems to be slowly coming back into the canon of like important death metal albums, which is Morbid Angel's Gateways to Annihilation. And you probably haven't heard that one before, right? Because that's a later Morbid Angel record.
No, I just know. Well, as I was given grief for before, I don't really know Altars of Madness, but I know the, Blessed and Covenant pretty well.
Oh, okay. So this is, Gateways is an album that honestly probably stands up to the first three. This is with their second vocalist bassist, Steve Tucker, and I think listening to this, you're going to detect some of the...
In retrospect, after recent Morbid Angel, we now nobody's nostalgic for Dave Vincent, right? That's changed people's perspectives. It's like, oh, there's Morbid Angel without Dave Vincent.
Like, yeah, and those albums are very good, actually.
Yeah,
but Gateways, check this out. This is going to be cool, and this is off one of the. This is known as a very slow Morbid Angel record, and this is one of the slowest songs on it, but it's one of my favorite Morbid Angel songs of all time. This is a passage off a track called He Who Sleeps. So, with Pneuma Hagion in mind, and all these other death metal influenced beatdown bands, check this out and see if you find the parallels.
All right.
I shall feast upon you in your wrath. You will destroy yourselves. Monsters, your slithering ancestors. Sickens the words. My brothers, invoke me from timeless sleep. My dreams destroyed, my vision lost. So I watch you pray. It's my always I am not your glory. Beg to be my sheep. You have fallen. Curse your empty lives. Red light, won't you turn on yourself?
So, Black Metal Guy, after listening to a lot of this kind of like hardcore meets death metal, am I on track that this might be super influential to that style?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, from the first 6 seconds in, I was like, yeah, for sure.
And you gotta imagine this. I mean, this record was 2000 or 2001, something like that. So it's like way ahead of the curve on it.
And it wasn't really what the death metal people were looking for at the time, right?
People liked it, but the way they read it was just as like a slow but weirdly complex death metal album. It's definitely within the milieu of Morbid Angel. They had done songs like this before.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
But this is basically a whole album of those ideas. You know, very kind of complex, syncopated drumming, slow, kind of doomy death metal riffs, but infused...
People would have called it doomy, but it is so much more tension. It's so much more body music. Like,
yeah, because of those huge bends and slides, which are part and parcel of Azagtote's guitar style.
Nice syncopations, you know.
Yeah, just a beautiful,
too often when
a beautiful rhythmic emphasis across this whole record.
And I was saying, I really found that kind of melodic color, that chord color in that last riff, really impressive. That big bending chords.
Well, yeah, you know, it's like you know, it's a hybrid riff, but it's a hybrid with kind of like mood. You know, you've got this like almost sorrowful kind of opening, and then it rips back into this like punishing death metal chord structure. Very cool. And that's something that I detected across this record, was this album's influence in particular, I think.
Dude, I'd love to hear Pneuma Hagion guy try to write a riff a little like that, with that just shape. Now that he's done something this rigorous, bring in like just that level of shade of color in a few of the riffs. That would be cool.
Yeah. I think that's where this will progress. I think that this is a statement record where it's okay, this is the new platform we're going to build off of, and then if these guys can bring in, you know, a little bit more tone color, I think this record is kind of like perfect as it is, but on the following stuff, let's bring that in. That's the logical way to shape this style in the future, I think.
For sure. I mean, this is, I mean, correct. Oh, I had a thought and it evaporated. We'll see if I remember in a second.
It evaporated under the weight of this record.
It evaporated under the space between chords in that Morbid Angel song. All right, so finally, we've got a track called Anti-Cosmic Incantations. Now, if that were the title of a track by any other band, I would instantly skip it. I'd think Watain worship. But in this context, sure. And let's go to This is a good example of very good fast parts in this record. The sample's mostly fast parts,
Right.
and I think this is very, very well done.
All right, let's go. That's cool. Now my TV's broken. My laptop is broken. I can't continue the podcast anymore. It's just everything's broken in my house.
Oh, man. Yeah, so obviously that last part was sick and was not even really a beatdown. That was like a breakdown in the style of like camo pants, post-Hatebreed, Slayer metalcore in the late 90s.
Yeah. Which is, like I was saying while I played it, is also kind of a Mortician thing, or like, honestly, like a porn grind thing.
That breakdown at the end?
No, towards the middle of that chun 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 chun.
Oh, the really crisp D beat. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very because kind of the musical pedigree these guys come from is oriented around like grindcore and gore grind. So they're listening to a lot of like weird underground porno grind and gore grind and noisy kind of cyber stuff. So I think that's where it's coming from. Also worthy of mention is the drum performance on this record, which is sort of like understated in a good way. It knows the very precise like impact points to drive in with like a heavy tom beat or something, but it sits back. It's very relaxed in a way. But it does exactly what it needs to across the record, I think.
I agree. I mean, a good example of that is the musical joke that took place at the beginning of that sample, which I love. You get this really sick, probably the catchiest blast riff on the record to start that out. I could remember it. And then he drops out and you think, okay, here comes the big riff. And it's just like, blast twice as fast. It's great. And then that rip into the D-beat part is great too. There are way fewer notes in that than your average Sweet Death D-beat riff, but it's way more effective. And Xibalba also uses those sort of inverted power chords to make it like you're sort of forcing every chord up the string or down,
No, I mean, this really is an example of addition through subtraction, which is something that I almost thought was just, like, over in metal. It's like, I mean, shit, we've had, over 40 years to play with these ideas.
It's never over.
Yeah, it really is never over. But, just, you get jaded over time. You think
for sure. No, absolutely, you do.
You think there's no fucking way to just, like, keep this going and to keep coming up with new starting points. But this is literally a new starting point. And I want to hear beatdown guys listen to this record and then reinterpret it for themselves. And I want to hear other death metal people take this as a platform to build off of. It's great. It's the sort of elemental thing that always attracted me to very kind of primitive death and grind stuff. And in 2020, it's still there. We can still do that. We can still remake this style of music in a totally new vision. And that's probably the best thing I can say about it, man.
All right. Well, let's close out there.
That's probably fair. Yeah. So, Pneuma Hagion's Voidgazer, outstanding record. Definitely going to be on my top 10 list for end of the year. Just awesome stuff. And we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back with some more music.
Hi, this is Taylor from Crushing the Scepter, and you're listening to Terminus Podcast.
All right, next up on the docket, Goatpenis, Decapitation Philosophy. And what's your experience with Goatpenis? Because I've been really into him for a long time.
Honestly, that's a little personal, man. And honestly, pretty offensive. No, with Goatpenis, I am mostly familiar with them as a meme. You know what I mean? Like, I've heard some of the songs here and there, and never quite. Always like in passing, and not when I'm in the mood to Goatpenis. But like, what struck me always as like a objectively very cool band, and the cool thing was that there was something kind of really unhinged sounding about it.
Yeah.
And that there'd be like these super abrasive, more typical grinding war metal riffs that just spill into these absurdly epic kind of lead guitars that are just sort of spiraling. Everything's just like a little out of control, like wild, out of control lead melodies. That's what I remember.
Definitely. So I've been a huge Goatpenis fan for probably close to 15 years, and feel free to cut that from the podcast and use it out of context. Well, so it's interesting talking about Goatpenis as a meme, because this is a band who really only emerged in the greater metal zeitgeist over the past, 5 years or so, I'd say. Up until then, they were a very, cult thing.
That is true, yeah.
Yeah, I got into them probably around 2006 or 2007 when they were on Satanic Skinhead Propaganda. And really, at the time, Antichrist Kramer was the person who brought them in. And Satanic Skinhead had pretty close ties to Nuclear War Now, so I think that's kind of where Yosuke picked them up from. But, that was pretty much the way these guys got to the United States. For those who aren't familiar, Goatpenis is a Brazilian band. But they just kind of dwelled in the underground of South America for a long time, apart from real, crazy war metal people. I remember when their second album came out in 2010, Biochem Terrorism, and I was like, holy shit, they're doing more records?
I think I heard them in 2008 or 2009 when I was just exploring around, and I remember feeling like, whoa, this is maybe a little gnarly for me.
Yeah.
I came back to it, later it's like, oh yeah, Goatpenis, that shit was really cool. But I remember this is the sort of thing you hear where you're getting into black and death metal, where you're like, ooh, this may be a bridge too far.
Well, that was one of the best things about Goatpenis, is the fact that it always kind of felt like that. No matter,
yeah.
I had been listening to plenty of insane war metal and grind and stuff, but then I heard Goatpenis and I was like, wow, this is really severe, even for me.
The epic leads make it sound just even more foreboding, right?
Yeah. I remember showing them to all my old bandmates and friends back in the day, and they really seized on those sort of almost sort of Roman Empire leads. That's what we always associate with. It's very, very primeval Roman sort of melodies.
Yeah, that's a really good description. That's of a certain kind of war metal melody. I think War Cult does that a bit. We talked about them 2 weeks ago. Yeah, definitely a certain kind of sort of stark, inhuman, extremely epic melody in war metal. Good word for it, Roman Empire, for sure.
Yeah. So, but when it comes to decapitation philosophy, I don't know. What are your kind of main impressions? Because this is the first full record you've heard by these guys, right?
Well, my favorite decapitation philosopher is George Bataille, but no, just kill me now. Sorry, I had to balance out. I had to balance out the Goatpenis joke with something really pretentious. So what first impressions of this record you were saying?
Well, yeah, because you haven't heard a full Goatpenis record before, right?
Yeah. So I guess my I did not hear the thing I was expecting to hear, which is that unhinged quality, right?
Yeah.
Which is that quality of sort of like riffs that are sort of coloring outside the lines rhythmically and sort of coloring outside the lines of good taste melodically. Instead there's this kind of like polished mid-heavy sound.
Yeah.
But what I was also struck by was that a lot of the riffing was quite good in a way that's very different from the way that sort of barbarian war metal riffing is good. Does that make sense? Like there are some pretty accomplished kind of melodic riffs on this that almost sound like Swedish Black Death stuff.
Yeah, Goatpenis has always been instrumentally a lot more talented than the kind of war noise guys that you would associate them with.
Yeah, they've been big. The aesthetic has really influenced the war noise thing, for sure.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think the ideal presentation of Goatpenis is in live sets, where, you know, these tiny fluctuations in songwriting produce a lot of, like, big singles, in a sense, which is weird to say for kind of a war metal band, but I can probably name half of a Goatpenis set off the top of my head just from being experienced with these guys. Cool. But let's do an initial sample. Mm-hmm. I think yours is first, right?
Yeah, I was thinking this is off of Glorious Immoral Carnage, and I think this is just this will give you a sense of the range of riff styles on this album, and you know they're kind of this is just a set of really good riffs in a row.
All right, let's do it. Well, you see, that makes me feel a little better, because I remembered the first half of this record being weaker than that was.
I had a similar feeling, which is just that I really liked that part when I first heard it, but I'm listening to it right now at a higher volume than I was when I first heard it this morning.
That helps with Goatpenis.
Well, also just the sound opens this at a medium volume. This will sound more like beefy mid-heavy standard death metal production. Turned up, it's got some space in it, and you can hear more of the bite in the tones. And I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds like war metal.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of the intrinsic Goatpenis ideas there of these like just brutal kind of like dissonant blasphemy style, kind of chromatic trem riffs. And
that first riff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it opens up into these extremely dramatic, kind of epic melodic ideas. And that's
Were they always doing that?
They were always doing it. They
always had like super consonant leads, but they always struck me more kind of almost like an Axis of Advance thing, but more Iron Maiden-y. That's at least what was in my memory.
They've always had that kind of pattern of these like super aggressive grinding parts contrasting with these very consonant kind of lead melodies. So I guess that's kind of like Axis of Advance, but the way it comes off is completely different.
Yeah, no, the second, when that more melodic riff opens up, it sounds a lot like Dawn. It was like a kind of, it was a darker and more complex kind of melody than I was expecting, and it works really well in this context, I think. It sounds, the Dawn record has a nuke going off on the cover for a reason, right? It's,
Well, it's, I think the Goatpenis is interesting because... in contrast to the rest of the war metal scene, which tends to come from black metal, these guys were originally called, back in the late 80s, that's something
they've been around that long?
They've been around since 88.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah, they've been around for 32 years. But their original name was Suppurated Fetus. So they're coming from grind and kind of death grind more than anything. And these kind of elaborate black metal ideas are something that was folded in a little bit later. Not late in terms of the career of the band, but, late in their progression very early on. So I think that's one of the things that makes Goatpenis distinct from the war metal contemporaries, is that it's not black metal overdriven to this insane degree necessarily. It's really coming from a root of death metal and grindcore.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you hear? Let's keep that in mind when we move to your sample. Just real quick, the last thing I want to say is that the third of the. I just want to also say that the third of those riffs was absolutely sick, and was a pretty cool like hybrid of that kind of epic Swedish sound, with the sort of the epic Swedish sound with this more sort of thick chorded kind of barbarian sound, and I think that has a very Roman Empire feel, that last riff.
Definitely, and that's something that is consistent throughout their whole career. A little bit later I'm going to play a sample from, I think, their first or second full-length record, and you'll hear the same things at work. But let's listen to one of my samples, because now, after hearing yours, I'm interested in re-listening to this and kind of seeing if my perspective changes a little bit. Because initially, I was a little disappointed by this record, just because, to kind of give my summary expectations when I first heard it, it felt a little toned down. There's a little bit of, like, sort of an alternate universe Behemoth quality to some of this, where it's like they still Behemoth, but they still play blast beats and still have really ferocious riffs. But it's,
as soon as you wrote that in the notes, I heard that, especially on some of the songs on the first side. But I wonder if turning it up more changes that for me.
I think turning it up more, have a couple beers, that's at least done that for me. So let's listen to another track off the first side, a couple tracks earlier. And we're just going to listen to the whole thing because it's only 2 minutes and 20 seconds. This is called Severe Homicidal Exacerbation.
Oh, that sounds like a Jism title.
It really does, doesn't it?
All right, let's go.
Let's try it.
I shall buy you one of my
Yeah, I'm starting to think that I still have my issues with this record, but I'm starting to think that maybe having a couple beers and cranking up the volume was the missing link. Because I am liking this a lot better now. So, the thing that... Okay, to pull back the camera a little bit, I think that we have kind of forgotten, or at least I have, that at this point, Nuclear War Now is probably the biggest still underground label in extreme metal, isn't it?
Would you say, what about Hell's Headbangers?
I think that Nuclear War Now releases more stuff than Hell's Headbangers.
Yeah, that might actually be true. I thought of Hell's Headbangers as the huge distro and all those things connected to it.
They were always kind of contemporaries of each other, but I think at this point Nuclear War Now is pulled ahead in terms of size.
That might be right, and NWN has reach with many different kinds of people on the scene, I think.
Yeah, and NWN, I think at NWN, at this point, you could probably compare them to something like $20 Spin in terms of reach and size, and number of releases a year. So I think that we've been a little bit stuck in 2010 thinking about NWN, and kind of forgotten that being on NWN now means that you have access to a lot more. So this is easily, without question, the most polished record that Goatpenis has done.
Yeah.
And I think that bothered me at first. They did their last record, Anesthetic Vapor, back in 2017, was on Nuclear War Now, but before that, they were on small labels. So, it's an interesting kind of philosophical thing. It's like, it's so much more polished now. Is this something that they always wanted to do, or is it just kind of happenstance of we have access to so many more resources? You know what
Revenge is on. Revenge is on Season of Mist. Might as well go for it. Right?
Well, yeah, war metal is cool among New York art kids now. So
exactly. Yes, among punks.
So one of the things I want to bring up is this is structurally very similar to early Goatpenis, but I also want to play an earlier Goatpenis song. This is a fairly classic Goatpenis song called Biochemical Annihilation. And this is off their first full-length record called Inhumanization that I believe was around 2001? 2004, apparently. A little bit later than I thought. So let's try this out and kind of compare these songs side by side. So maybe that's a little bit
that
more
was
that
fucking sick.
Yeah, that's a little bit more that like really unhinged quality that you were expecting, right?
Yeah, and like performance-wise, for sure, more unhinged in a good way. But also like if there's a stylistic difference, you can hear it's the same band for sure.
Yeah,
and there's basically the same skill in the riffing. But if there's a stylistic difference, it's one of the things that makes it sound really unhinged is that the guitar. I guess the riffing is more speed metal. The melody is in the new one. The melody is coming more from kind of chorded or these kind of Black Deathy ideas. Here, it's just this crazed sort of like squiggles of speed metal, dark speed metal riffing. You know?
Yeah, it's So you can hear that these are kind of like similar ideas on these two tracks, but the newer one feels more restrained. You know,
that's certainly true. Yeah, it's hard to argue with that going from this to that. A little more restrained on the vocals too.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that kind of disappointed me was, you know, early Goatpenis is all about maintaining that gore grind quality of, like, everything is pitch shifted. It's always double tracked vocals with the regular one and the pitch shifted version, which is like blasts across the surface of the music.
Which is very cool. You know, it's like the vocals as noise.
Oh, definitely.
And they just play a much more prominent role, I think, on this one on Biochemical than they do on the new record.
Yeah, I think it's but it's interesting because the question is then, is this what Goatpenis always imagined themselves as, this more polished version? Or was it like, oh, let's give it a shot now that we have this? You know what I mean?
I think it was more the latter. The sheer skill with which they do this unhinged thing on Biochemical is, especially given how long they've been around, like, they seem to I think that's not, like, accidentally being raw, even in a cool way. I think that's being masters of a specific style of kind of crazed, erratic war metal. This is like this seems like a concerted effort to do it, and I think there's been some shift in the riffing, for sure, towards maybe more, quote, normal kinds of black and death metal riffing.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes it still stand out to me, that I can't dislike it, because the quality, as they've shifted into this more normal Black Death sound, the quality of the riffing is still really high. I mean,
it's definitely still good. I'm not going to say this is a bad album anyway.
Yeah, it sounds so much like, you know what it is? It's like, yeah, so relative to the craze, I think both of us obviously prefer the old, insane Goatpenis. But what this does is this puts it more in the realm of, like, stuff that's really influenced by Marduk, stuff that's really influenced by this sort of more morbid, angel-y side of war metal. And relative to things like that, this just has much higher quality riffs than most of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But, you know, some of those other bands sound crazier, right? I mean...
Yeah. And, all right, so let me get to the second half of the record, which I think is a lot stronger than the first half. Let's listen to a song called Piles of Teeth. It's the shortest song on the record, under 2 minutes, so let's just listen to this whole thing. And I think this is closer to the old Goatpenis that I really love. Haha, that's tight.
That is insane.
Yeah, and I think that it, listening to it again, it works because it's structured like a gore grind song. It's like two main riffs, throw a lead in there, and get out. Mm-hmm. It's just got that immediacy to it. And, as Goatpenis has kind of evolved as a band, they're trying to experiment with, more kind of informed song structures. I think that's what they lose, is a little bit of that immediacy that really appeals to me.
Oh, well, yeah, you also got the lead flying out there in a way that was pretty similar to the way the vocals and the lead blasted across
very
the
Carcass.
space.
Like, yeah, the way that lead comes in, that is basically like a Carcass lead off, like, Symphonies of Sickness,
It's also like what the vocals were doing on the old Goatpenis track we listened to.
Yeah. It's got that explosive quality to it.
Generally, the guitar playing is... On the back end, there's more of that sort of really intense single-string speed metal-y stuff. It's less... That's not where the big melodies are being put, but it has that frantic looping energy that I like a lot. So, more high-intensity speed metal riffing good. All right, and do you have anything more you want to say about the piles of teeth, or?
No, I just think that might be my... It's funny, because it's the shortest. That might be my favorite track off the album. As soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, all right, they still got it. They're playing around a little bit on this album, but they still got it. Let's just go.
Yeah, so another thing is that there are parts of this record, consistent with the idea that war metal, like grindcore, is kind of wanted more of a feeling or a technique than any one style of riffing. There's also like bolt thrower parts on this record. They're taking full advantage of that. But so here we go towards something that has... There's one track that just is the bolt thrower track. This isn't like that, but it has more of that feel. This has the very sick title, Abnormal Infantry Regiment, which sounds like a thing that you would have to buy a special rules codex for you can.
It's a type of unit that you purchase in Red Alert 2 or something.
It's like Imperial. It's like Imperial Guards, but they're chaos tainted. But you're allowed to use them for the Imperium, and there's weird rules. Like you have to have a psyker to control them.
I can definitely say you gotta have the psyker, and they've got like an unusual kind of chaos grenade that uses a different die to calculate the radius.
if you roll a 6, they if you roll a 6, they go insane and attack their own side.
Definitely. All right. So, Abnormal Infantry Regiment. Let's fucking do it.
Cool.
I don't think I ever noticed the kind of speed metal thing until you mentioned it with Goatpenis. Like, but you're correct, especially that dun 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 dun. Yeah, that's a total like we played like ADX on like the last show or the one before, and it's like, oh, that could be like a really frantic bridge riff for ADX. It's like and then they just play it like even faster and rawer. It's like maybe that's one of the missing links for this band is like that speed metal energy.
I think so. I mean, and it's like that's a great example of a riff that people who do not understand the craft of extreme metal rhythm guitar would say is boring, right? There's no, quote, catchy melodic quality to that riff.
It's so tense, though. It's so fucking
it's
like...
so,
ugh.
Yeah, exactly. The shape of the riff, the particular shape and timing of the riff and the way it's played, which is difficult to put in words exactly, but just gives it incredible force, right?
Well,
and it also makes it's so kind of dumb sounding that it's memorable.
Well,
right?
it's also, it's like all the cool riffs off the middle tracks of Rain and Blood, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And the really hardcore ones that everyone doesn't care about. You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. The real Terminus goons prefer the middle of Rain and Blood. I was thinking we should start calling our fans Terminators.
That's not bad. Yeah, that's pretty good. We got to come up with some sort of
Terminator Goon Squad.
Just American chavs, basically. So overall, I think after listening to this some more, I think that I like it more than I did originally. I still think I prefer the early Goatpenis stuff just because it's so much crazier and weirder. And I think that the first half of this record is kind of an experiment to bridge the Goatpenis style into something a little more conventional. Mm-hmm. But the second half kind of saves it for me. And honestly, I mean, the first half, they're not bad songs. It's just I have certain expectations of this band, and it's maybe they're trying to move in a different direction from what I'm interested in. Which is,
I think
they've been around for 32 years. They're allowed to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm kind of with you on this. Like, I felt like I wasn't sure how I felt about it when I first heard it. I liked it. I was impressed by the riffing quality, but the overall experience wasn't what I'd been expecting. Now I feel pretty positive about it. If they didn't have the second half, number one, we just like from everything starting on track 5 forward, I think we prefer, right? But
Definitely.
like, it's not number one, we just like the songs, but also it shows that the band is the same, as you said. They still got it. Right.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think that makes the rest of the experience, that sort of earns the poppier stuff at the beginning. And I'm using poppy in a very relative sense of the word. Right?
Still more extreme than most stuff out there. We're just used to them being the most extreme band in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so Goatpenis, don't flamethrower us.
Oh man, you gotta see live sets of these guys. All of them are like fucking bodybuilders, dude. Like, they're giants. They don't have bullet belts, they have grenade belts.
Yes, I've seen the grenade belts.
It's so sick.
Yeah.
So, all right. You got an interlude track in mind, or?
Oh, God. Well, God, so hard to follow up the energy of Goatpenis. What do you do? I had some thoughts for interludes today, but
I mean, I've got one geared up, possibly.
Let's grind those gears of war.
I mean, if we're talking about just like cool war metal shit, and we talked about Verdunkeln the other day as an interlude track, so let's talk about another favorite of ours also from Von Records, which is Truppensturm.
Yeah, which is a band we haven't heard from in a while. Last one was
2014. They did a split.
I guess they did a split, but yeah, the last full length 2010. Part of that Von scene, you were saying, is Verdunkeln. Also, just the drummer for Truppensturm is Alexander von Meilenwald, who you might know better from the Ruins of Everest and from Nagelfar, one of Germany's first kind of big, grandiose second wave bands.
Yeah, so let's listen to something off the second Truppensturm album from 2010 called Salute to the Iron Emperors. And this is a track called Gustav the Great. So let's check this out, and we will be back with the back half of our show. right, we are back after some pretty solid war metal from Truppensturm with something a little bit different. We have the debut album from Black Horizon Ancient Belial.
But before we introduce it, you need to plug our social media and Patreon.
Oh, goddamn, you're right. You see, you were looking at the notes, I wasn't. So, yeah, I gotta remember to re-plug our shit at the top of the hour. Death metal guy on the ones and twos. You know, so, if you like our content, feel free to follow us on social media. Facebook, at Terminus Podcast, and Instagram, at Terminus Extreme Metal. And if you really like our deep discussions of Brazilian war metal, feel free to follow us, or subscribe, rather, on either Patreon or Subscribestar, where $3 gets you access to our bonus episodes, and $5 and up gets you access to our Terminus Black Circle, where we talk about forgotten nu metal records and depressive hip-hop from the mid-90s.
Oh, well, you do.
Well, I do. Well, you should show up.
Don't
more.
worry,
You should hang out.
where we give clutch recommendations of obscure, I don't know, super cool obscure stuff.
like we don't do that enough on the show.
Yeah, you're on
like,
Discord more than me. Fair enough.
You can influence it more. We're gonna hang out tonight. Are you gonna be there?
No, but
Why? Oh, Jesus Christ! It sucked the wind out of my sails.
I just posted some good screamo. It's
I know you did. You talked about it at the top of the hour. It's your one contribution per week.
I'll post more cool things on the Discord.
All right, there we go. So, Black Horizon Ancient Belial. First record, A Winter Dead Wandering Forever. And so we had to do some research on this guy. This is a one-man project out of Japan. And we had to just kind of like plug through his Instagram to figure out what was going on here. So I think you've got the compelling thing about his kind of relation to the greater Japanese scene, right?
Well, as you said, like it seems like this guy's in a hardcore band or something. So I did some digging through Bandcamp and Instagram. Followed him on Instagram, and he's in a hardcore band. I hope a beatdown band called Gates of Hopeless.
It's a little more old school. I listened to a little video that he shot. It's a little bit more like Terror, like Madball type stuff.
Oh, well, we like Terror.
That's also good. Yeah.
And the tagline is Militant Fury Edge from Osaka, Japan.
That's very sick.
Yes.
And he's got a flyer on his Instagram where it shows that he's opening for Anatomia. I
was going to tell you that, too.
Yeah,
a great band.
Yeah, one of Japan's best doom death bands alongside Coffins and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What was also interesting, though, and I never noticed, is that he has a picture showing off his both first and second press editions of Vinterland's Welcome My Last Chapter, which is a band that I wasn't familiar with that you actually showed me a few weeks back.
And I actually showed it to you on the Discord.
Yeah, so that's why you need to subscribe to get on the Discord. But and so how do you think? Because you were talking about that, you were listening to this record and wondering if Vinterland was an influence. So what is Vinterland like?
Maybe we should play some Vinterland for the folk.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, because that's a pretty obscure band, even for kind of vital second wave adjacent stuff.
Yeah, we could. So yeah, I was wondering if it was related to Vinterland. This guy, Black Horizon Ancient Belial. I will always say the full name because it's sick. Black Horizon Ancient Belial never goes quite as full on florid as Vinterland, so that's why I was wondering. But it's clearly an influence. So Vinterland were like a kind of forgotten mid-90s Swedish Black Death band. And what you can learn from them is that the Swedish Black Death scene is just a complete spectrum from mellow death over to something like Dawn or Nidden, or Thy Primordial or something. And it's got like and so on Welcome My Last Chapter, which was like the only full length they recorded, a lot of riff ideas there are just pretty close to black metal versions of melodeath ideas, but executed with such passion and intensity and this kind of intense scope and commitment that you could really only get from teenagers, that even for me, I can be a little more allergic to the sentimental stuff than the death metal guy. It's just obviously a fantastic album.
Yeah.
And
it's very ahead of its time. It really seems to be
Yeah.
incorporating some of those, like, emo ideas that I'm really into in modern black metal. I don't think they were listening to it. I think they arrived at it parallel evolution.
Oh, for sure. They just arrived at it by listening to, like, melodic black and death metal and being teenagers.
Yeah.
Like, I think some of the songs are about girls. The only thing I can, like, connect it to, really, is, like, Naglfar. But, like, Naglfar were trying to be a commercial band. And this was not... The other cool thing about this is it's hyper sort of melodic and emotional, but it's not commercial at all.
Well, I mean, dumb people would associate this with Dissection, you know?
Yeah, well, it's on the spectrum, right? And Dissection sounds more like a black metal band with all those mayhem riffs and stuff. But like this is further towards the melodeath side, but also less commercial. Mm-hmm. So let's go with the song, which I suspect is about a girl, called "I'm an Other in the Night."
I'm an other in the night. All right,
right.
Let's just start from the top and let's go. Yeah, Vinterland, I'm amazed that I missed those guys, because that is, like, so up my alley. It's like almost like it's got, like, a Ludo missile quality or something.
It does,
but so early.
Sure. Well, you know, the other thing that makes it is there's real interplay between the two guitars, which is a thing that sets apart a lot of the best Swedish stuff. That's a down, 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 down. That thing that comes in over top of the first riff.
Yeah.
So cool. And even though they both have that kind of, like, very bright primary color consonant thing, especially the first riff. The first riff has that melodeath quality. The second one has this more sort of chorded primal quality, and they just weave together, and it's beautiful.
No, it's sick, and it's interesting hearing that again and being like, oh, so maybe this is one of the primary influences for this guy to get back to this record. So, Black Horizon, Ancient Belial. So I've got a particular affinity for the Japanese metal scene. I am basically a weeb who doesn't happen to like that much anime.
Although you like more anime than the average person.
Yeah, the average person likes no anime. So I mean, but as a wannabe art kid, I've seen some anime that I like. But so what this strikes me as, and this is something we've talked about before, in relation to a lot of Asian bands is there's a very unique thing that happens when Asian guys are interpreting European cultural artifacts. So this is a project that is clearly very indebted to the second wave of black metal. The biggest thing that I detected was Emperor, along with maybe some Satyricon, and definitely Winterland, and probably some other stuff. But
if you just said Emperor Winterland with a kind of eccentric one-man band quality to it, you would get a lot of this, I think.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But there's a unique kind of quality from being a Japanese guy, because there's always been this very strange relationship between kind of European cultural ideas and Japanese. We've talked about that in music and anime and film and stuff like that on previous episodes. So this is a really interesting thing, because Japan, musically, in terms of the metal scene, has a really strong kind of death metal and a beatdown and gore grind scene. Black metal, it's always lagged a little bit. There's some great black metal bands from the Japanese scene. For instance, like Endless Dismal Moan has become a good one. A big
Arkha Suwa, Hakuja,
Magane, all very good bands. But it's always not really found its own sound. So here's an instance of a guy just trying to create his own thing, kind of from nothing, And what do we get? I mean, how would you... what's your initial impression of this music?
I don't think this has quite coalesced yet. I think the aesthetic
I would agree,
references...
Yeah.
The aesthetic references are... I thoroughly approve of the aesthetic and the spirit, Emperor plus Winterland, sign me the fuck up. Emperor plus Winterland by a Japanese guy, hell yeah, right? And I think, you mentioned, I think an important thing about it is, I guess, two things that make it eccentric in a way that has potential, but that are also sort of challenges for him to overcome, is he's very capable of writing cool riffs, right? He's a technically proficient player, and he's got a good ear for melody and harmony. But he's facing the hurdle of basically just, how do you start a symphonic black metal band with limited personnel and digital recording, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so kind of like that band from Vietnam, El Cross, we talked about a few weeks ago, right? He's like, he can write these difficult neoclassical melodies that other bands don't even attempt, right? And he's got this very big picture cinematic ambition for how he wants his songs to sound. And those are big strengths. But it's like, it's in between his granular skill at riff writing and his big picture vision. There's those sort of middle tiers of songwriting that have yet to coalesce. So it's like,
I got that.
I would say structurally the songs are kind of long, kind of sprawling, and stop and start a little bit. But like in many of these moments, you get these bursts of great intensity and brilliance. Yeah,
I think that's what grabs me about this, is the fact that there are these flurries of like real brilliance. There's moments on this record that are as strong as some of the best stuff we've covered over the year. It's definitely inconsistent, but I also think that I might like some of the things that you dislike about this record. Because I'm really into how this music sprawls out, and I even like some of the stop-start stuff.
Don't get me wrong, I think that is distinctive. I think you could keep it in a way, but maybe you would have to like realize that it's a quality of the music that might be there by accident, and then learn to work with it, make it a strength.
How do you take control of it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. So let's do a quick a sample, and I think this is a good kind of nutshell of what the record sounds like. It has most of the parts. So this is a track. This is towards the end of a track called "Baptism of Incompatible Souls." God, I want to know what the fuck these song titles mean because they are weird.
It's about that feeling when the goth chick you're dating tells you that your horoscopes are incompatible.
Oh God, haven't been there, but close. So, Baptism of Incompatible Souls. Let's basically listen to the end of this track. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty representative of the record. So that sample opens up with this very, like, storming, aggressive, kind of Swedish black metal riff. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the stop-start in the kind of sample or solo vocal part there into a...
Which was, I did not notice on the first listen through, but is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I really like that. Into a very gothic part, which could be similar to Elcrost. Obviously, very different regions of Asia, but, you know, as a reference point. Very gothic, very
I think it's fair to say Elcrost had a kind of Japanese quality to what they were doing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, it's fair. But, you know, to try and define these scenes a little bit better, you know.
Sure.
So you've got this very gothic part into this huge, overwrought sort of like mega dissection part. You know, dissection meets Cradle of Filth at, you know, 280 BPM. But
simpler than a dissection riff. It has that Vinterland quality, right?
It does.
You can hear the first channel guitar come in with that kind of pretty, you know, primordial Swedish Black Death riff, and then the other one comes in harmonizing it. They lock in. It's you know what it is? It's very vampiric, but in the cool way, instead of the Xeroxing yourself on a neon green cover way.
It's interesting because, also the single channel guitar thing is also a hardcore thing. And now, knowing that this guy is in a hardcore band, because I knew that he was affiliated in some way with Victim Records, one of the labels that released this record. Under the Fog Records is like his own imprint. Hopefully we'll see some new stuff on that one. So, but yeah, that's a very hardcore technique, and it's interesting with this new perspective. Let's see how kind of the hardcore filters in, because I think that's the origin of a lot of the stop-start stuff that you're not that into.
Kind of things that would be breakdowns in another context.
Yeah, I think that he sees the stop-start as a way to generate tension, even though it's not like a traditional black metal technique, although I would argue that Emperor does some of that stuff on In the Nightside. you know?
No, yeah, sure. No, I don't disagree with that. Sometimes I just want the thing that comes out of the stop-start to relate more to what was happening before.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And maybe we'll see an example of that with our later samples. But I also hear that. Yeah, I mean, Emperor does that for sure. Big dramatic single channel guitar and then second drop, also a good move. Let's go to what I tried to pick was an area that to me is another sort of high density area. Here I don't think this has a stop start. And it's just the back end of, I guess it means something that we're both sampling back ends of tracks often.
Yeah.
Bloody
These are
Craving.
long songs. Yeah.
Yeah, they're long songs, and I think a lot of there's a kind of development thing, so they all kind of get going. But this is a place where I think, like, I don't know if individually any of these are the best riffs on the record, but this is a very high density area with a lot of drama. And so all the riffs connect in a pretty cool way.
Okay.
So Bloody Craving and Eternal Cruel.
God, I love the fucking English song titles.
Yes,
fucking
agreed.
rule.
Yes.
Let's go.
One of the heaviest things you can do.
Definitely. All right.
I know you know because it's a muscular.
Oh, man, that last part, dude.
That's great, right? It's pretty cool to be able to just be like, yeah, I'm going to write a riff that sounds like Thorns of Crimson Death, but more sad.
No, there's that's something I've noticed with a lot of the Japanese bands, is that they have a real fixation on these very straightforward kind of melodeath metalcore parts that they will inject into whatever kind of music they're playing. They don't give a fuck, man.
You think that's... I heard that as like Dissection, Thorns of Crimson Death, you know, it's...
It is, but, I mean, Dissection is a big influence to stuff like Black Dahlia Murder, which is very essential for early sort of melodeath meets metalcore stuff. And I think that's kind of the pipeline we're seeing here.
Well, Well, I don't know if I agree with that, but you might be right.
But you respect my opinion, nonetheless.
I didn't say that. But no, it's I certainly hear a lot of things. I think I hear things throughout this record that do sound kind of metalcore for sure. That switch at the end. So we'll go back to what happened before it. So basically, there's just a lot of really cool change-ups that happen there. And there are things where parts drop out and change up, but all of these, and he's got all these different parts in play, right? We get this kind of like super tense, lead-driven Cradle of Filth kind of riffing. We get this kind of, as you were saying, kind of very Cradle of Filth, spooky kind of 6/8 breakdown. Mm-hmm. Like vocal shifting channels. Hard to keep track of everything that happens in that section, right? We get back to some like very kind of like Swedish Black Death riffing. It's very storming, and then some D beats. and the D beats trade really well with that kind of wrathful sounding Dawn riffing, but like altogether there's a huge range of stylistic and harmonic contrast between them, but they're all talking to each other. Mm-hmm. Each new riff answers what happened before, I think, in a really cool way, and then obviously throws it down into that huge rock out 6/8 riff, and that's just the rest of the track. So I think that's a very effective condensation of this record.
It's very it's like a guy trying to make a record off like his first listen to all these albums we're talking about. You know, it's got this like immediate enthusiasm, but it's also got this kind of telephone quality of, well, it's like I said in the notes, it feels like a lot of the Asian guys who are kind of heavily influenced by second wave black metal, they're hearing very different things in the music than we are. Which I guess is something that happened there. It's like you talked about Thorns of Crimson Death, and I talked about, Black Dahlia Murder and kind of metalcore style Melodeath. Mm-hmm. And I think that both of them are correct. I think that a lot of these guys are maybe hearing these ideas filtered down through metalcore bands and things like that. And then that's kind of their process as far as songwriting goes, even if they end up picking up the originating features later on. You know what I mean?
Kinda. Is there a big metalcore scene there's a big hardcore scene in Japan. Is there a big metalcore scene?
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of like American, like mid-2000s metalcore meets Melodeath stuff.
Okay, that makes sense then, if there's a lot of it. Yeah, the thing that was sticking out for me about that particular riff was just the way it was chorded. Was, or just the timing. It had this sort of graceful timing, and
it's got that kind of
black metal-y way.
That folky rhythm there.
Yeah,
that was always
that's
an important part. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it kind of returning to the original reference points in dissection. I can hear that, yeah.
Well, definitely. Well, we also have to understand that the whole pop musical culture of Japan is extremely different from Western ideas, where it's still extremely rock-based. You have the whole visual Kai movement, where sort of traditional heavy and speed metal is a lot closer to the mainstream than it is in the US. So there's a whole kind of musical foundation over there, which is radically different from ours, and that's necessarily going to shape the way this music is created.
That makes sense. Yeah, and also obviously the hardcore influence coming in there with the D-beats, which I think is, you could get almost the same rhythmic effect from doing double pedal bass. Like Emperor would always play just really heavy double pedal bass over under D-beats, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Motorhead beat, right? And you normally you would, if you were doing an orthodox Emperor tribute, that's what you do. But here he's just like, why not play the D-beats? and I think it's good.
The D-beat that you find within the Emperor already,
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And the only other person I know who really does that is like Satanic War Master or Horna sometimes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But now we got to get into, we've got a double sample here off the final epic track, the almost 14-minute title track, A Winter Dead Wandering Forever. And so we're splitting this into two parts, right?
Yeah, so this is basically just, I think we both think this is probably, certainly has the coolest parts on the record, and I think you picked a moment, and then I was like, screw it, I'll pick the part right before it, and we'll get this long sample that basically runs from just before the 6 minutes and 44 seconds to 10:30. So this is a whole sequence. We'll just pause after mine and keep going.
Definitely. All right, so let's start with your part.
Yeah, and I guess the way I'll introduce that is just, I saw your notes before I listened, and you described some really cool part, and I thought you were talking about this part. And then when I got to your part, I was like, oh, that's also the really cool part.
So let's start about halfway through A Winter Dead Wandering Forever. So,
you feel that build up at the end?
Yeah, definitely. And there was an interesting thing while the sample is playing that we were talking about, something we both compared this to, which was...
Well, you said it during this, so yeah.
Oh, Dark Tranquility.
Yeah, so when that just melodic riff, that racing kind of harmonized lead riff just starts spiraling upward, chasing itself, one line chasing the other, yeah. First of all, that's beautiful and one of the most distinctive sounding ideas I've heard on this record melodically. But also, yeah, you said Old Dark Tranquility.
Yeah, the first 2 or 3 albums, like Skydancer and The Gallery, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on.
Oh, I'm thinking pre that. See, earlier in this segment, I was thinking, shit, what's that band? The really early Melodeath band. And yeah, you nailed it. But Dark Tranquility's demo and EP sound more death metal-y, and don't have the really fruity parts of Skydancer, but they have the same kind of crazy kind of melodic ideas that would become bigger in black metal or black death, but are in a strictly death metal context and have this kind of crazy tempo to them.
Yeah, it's just that, because, obviously melodic black metal and melodic death metal, especially from Gothenburg, we're all feeding into each other constantly.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that Dark Tranquility kind of, because, what are the Melodeath heroes? You got At the Gates, who had, they broke up for, 10 years, and then you've got In Flames, who just went into radio rock and metalcore. Well, then you had Dark Tranquility.
Arguably from the beginning.
arguably from the beginning. I actually like a lot of later In Flames when they got, like, bad, according to people. Because I think that In Flames were always reaching towards what would become metalcore. But, you know, that's a different conversation.
I get that. That makes sense.
Dark Tranquillity just kept plugging away and kind of redefining their sound every 7 years or so. You know? And I think that we're hearing some very early Dark Tranquillity here. But let's get to the second part of this sample, the selection that I chose, because I think this is my single favorite passage on the record. So, right from where you left off, let's just keep going. Okay, so you can't tell me that last riff, like, isn't one of the coolest parts of a song this year. Like, holy shit, man. Like, God.
Well, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, not my favorite of that sequence of riffs, but that's like but like the part it's in context, it's really good.
Well, yeah, you said in your part of this song, it's like, it's always spiraling upwards. And then it keeps going through this passage. It's like 4 minutes of just, like, constantly ramping up the energy, which is so fucking cool. And I love stuff like that, where it feels like, it's like, how does it keep ratcheting up? Oh, it just does. You just keep going, you know? Keep climbing up that fretboard.
I should say, I think I stole the phrase "spiraling ever upward" from your notes, which means like the point is just I think the spiral started a little earlier, right? With that,
yeah, I get that. Yeah,
if there's a place where the dropout at the end of that is so sick.
Yeah,
and and a thing he does really well there that bands, I was thinking about this in relation to some other good black metal band we covered, but like a thing this guy does really well is key changes. Mm-hmm. Which almost nobody does anymore.
Yeah, because it's too hard.
One thing that makes Emperor so effective is that they don't not only find ways of shifting the harmonies or whatever, they do key changes, which allows them to get from the really brutal sounding stuff to the epic sounding stuff. And this guy just takes one epic riff and then key changes it and then plays another epic riff. Just sick.
Well, yeah, it's the hardcore quality, which is that kind of gets to the stop start stuff, where I think the stop start stuff on this track lands really hard. like in a very kind of traditional Emperor way, because Emperor will just stop and the keyboards come in, little guitar fill, key change, go. You know, like there's a certain confidence to it that I really appreciate.
I think it works on the second one. I'm not so sure about the place where we paused the sample between ours. Because he starts this process of escalating, and then it's sort of like, starts this process of escalating. It breaks. The break sound with the keyboard swell and the sample, that's cool. That's a good build. But then it's like we're starting from ground zero again with that very cool riff that follows it that you said sounds kind of Viking.
Yeah.
We both really like that riff after it. I was thinking like a single string version of a Graveland riff. You said Hades.
And what it comes together as is One Cent from the Golden Hall, you know, which it really is. You know, that perfect juxtaposition of sort of like black Viking melody implemented in this melodeath rhythmic framework.
And so the riff it comes back with is great, but like I feel like that weird sort of like he starts escalating with that Dark Tranquility kind of thing, stop, restart at baseline riff. That part to me doesn't make much sense.
I guess that's the part that I would argue is like it doesn't feel like it's restarting there to me. I think that's a logical transition based off of a real worship of early Emperor and maybe early Mayhem, because Mayhem has some pretty churning transitions on Day Mysteries. It kind of makes more inherent sense to me, I guess. It's like...
It made more sense to me the second time I heard it. And I mean, also, it just makes for a very memorable passage. Like, oh, that one cool part where he does the insane beautiful build-up riff, stops, goes again, and then just does another insane, beautiful build-up riff, right? I mean, that is a unique idea. It's like, I will not forget this passage of music because it has that eccentric structure to it. So maybe you're right.
Definitely. Well, I think we're about good on that. So I really like this record. I've got a lot of affection for this. And, I mean, we've been covering some kind of Asian black metal stuff lately, and I think there's a lot of stuff to dig out of that scene, the greater Asian black metal scene. And, I really like this one a lot. So
I think this is very promising. I think it has formidable spirit, and I'm excited to keep following this guy's work.
Definitely. So let's take a quick break and get back to our final record of the night.
This is Old One Gash, and you're listening to Terminus.
All right, man. Well, I guess we gotta talk about one of the best black metal bands of the last 20 years.
What a tragedy.
Yeah.
So you actually, I think you, I picked up on Inquisition late. I didn't get them early on. I think you kind of got it earlier than I did.
That might be true. I didn't, totally love them at first, but I definitely listened a reasonable amount to one of those earlier Inquisition albums, and I think, it took a long time for me to get into blast beats just for the sake of blast beats, or to find a groove in them, and also the Dagon vocals were, as many thought back then, an acquired taste. But I definitely appreciated it, and I think they definitely had some big rolling, grooving tracks. I liked the one that starts with "You are now my living altar," and then just massive epic riff rolls for the rest of the track. I liked the droning quality. I liked the sort of bizarre pummeling aspect of it, and then I think where they really started to catch on for me again was 2013 or 14, maybe 2014, when I was partying. I was partying a lot.
That's where I got into them. Was Obscure Verses for the Multiverse.
That album was so fucking good. Yeah, I think probably I had some friends who were just like, hey, this record is really good. And I was like, oh, let's revisit Inquisition. And then from there, I pretty much, I love that record. Yeah, it's rare for a band to make one of their defining records that paradigm shifts them late in their career.
Yeah.
Or quote-unquote late. You know,
because that's when I was over in Germany living for a while, and I ended up seeing Inquisition live like 3 times over the course of like a year and a half. Because I think that...
Did you get it the first time?
I did get it the first time. Because they were playing with it was on a tour. Imagine this fucking lineup, dude, seeing this live. Svartjern, just cool second wave worship from Norway. Inquisition, Behemoth, and Cradle of Filth.
I feel like I'd be feel like my neck would hurt too much for Cradle of Filth. I mean,
Cradle of Filth.
I wouldn't remember most of Cradle of Filth. I think
Cradle of Filth encored with Funeral in Carpathia. So that tells you the kind of show that we were at there.
What is that? I don't know Cradle well enough.
Oh, that's off Dusk and Her Embrace. They basically just played songs off like the first 4 or 5 records. It was just
That's
like
pretty cool.
A best of from their early career with, a couple tracks off of, I think it was Hammer of the Witches they were touring
That's
on.
really cool. Hey, if you're here for our new record, too bad. But good news.
We've got every great song. But yeah, Inquisition... But yeah, Inquisition was playing, and I was like, oh, Inquisition, I mean, this will be cool to see. And then seeing it live, I got it. Because I hadn't probably listened to them in like 6 years at that point. Mm-hmm. But that record, Obscure Verses for the Multiverse, was, oh, I get this now. All right.
And then when I went back from that. I'd also found them like a hit singles band. Like Strike of the Morning Star, I knew before that came out. And I was like, that's a fucking killer song. But yeah, after Obscure Verses, I went back to Into the Infernal Regions, Invoking the Majestic Throne, and those just... I fucking love them. Or Magnificent Glorification of Lucifer is one of my favorites also. And they have this rigorous minimalism quality that we both love. And just some of the most barbaric riffs ever written, which are also extremely memorable to me.
Well,
they have
also, don't forget Desolate Funeral Chant. Like, the dumbest Inquisition song. It's like 2 riffs for 7 minutes. It's awesome. like their black skull crushing metal song,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think my it's hard to keep the album titles separate from each other, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Invoking the Majestic Throne and Magnificent Glorification are, I think, 2 of my favorites.
So this record, though, after after kind of a hiatus.
Gotta disappear into the Washington Mountains for a while.
Definitely, but this is a great record, man. This might be one of their best. I think Obscure Verses is still probably my favorite. Mm-hmm. But this might be second best for me. I feel like... Because I appreciate the early Inquisition stuff, but I feel like they come into their own in the back half of their career so far.
Oh, disagree. But
really?
I think... Yeah. I mean, no, the early stuff is brilliant. It's just, like pummeling drone... a guy... I remember being on a thread once, and the guy from... described it as... I mean, a great band, but he described it as like Pantera with blast beats. And I was just like, I'll fucking cop to that.
In a sense, he's not wrong,
Well, the early shit, yeah. I mean, it's much deeper than that would suggest.
Well, but
It's deep. The early stuff is deeply reptile-brained, and it also has some of the epic riffs that become big later.
I think that's it for me. I think that, for me, Inquisition is a band defined by those epic, kind of beautiful, elemental lead riffs.
Well, you love those.
I do love those in black metal.
Yes.
Just about everything I like has that. But this record, in particular, does indicate an expansion of the idea. Because Inquisition is one of those rare bands that has this totally elemental, singular quality, which is Dagon's guitar style, you know? Mm-hmm. Which is as informed by black metal as it is by, like, AC/DC and blues rock in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. The earlier stuff had a very, yes. Yeah, I mean, well, we could talk. I guess we've talked enough about Inquisition in general, I guess, so we'll move on. I guess there's so much we could say.
Well, yeah, we'll start with a sample. This is one of mine. And this is interesting because I think this is one of the moments that proves that, Dagon is expanding his guitar style, and he's bringing in influences from stuff that, the death metal guy loves in black metal. So let's listen to a little bit of Necromancy Through a Buried Cosmos, the third track on the record.
Mm-hmm. So pretty.
Yeah, so we were talking, while that was playing about how it's like, oh, dude, it's got this, like, cowboy energy, which is something we've talked about where American black metal is channeling those sorts of cultural or atmospheric ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's also channeling emo, which we've talked about plenty.
Well, that last riff in particular.
Yeah.
There's some even more emo shit, I think, later in this track.
There's a lot of emo stuff on this record.
Well, a couple parts that literally sound like Adam's song.
Yeah.
A little much for yours truly, but even though the Inquisitors are indulging in heresy, they have the chops to keep it. Every one of those moves is kind of justified to me by the other stuff that's occurring around it.
It's rationalized by the songs around them. But here's an interesting question here, which is this kind of like cowboy western riffing. seems to merge very easily into this kind of suburban emo melodic idea. Are those just related musically? Is it just like these pronounced elaborations of the pentatonic scale that we're hearing? And I guess more importantly, is that, I mean, I guess we've talked about it before on the show, is that the sound of American black metal? Is to fully embrace both of those ideas at once?
Maybe. I mean, I'm fine with keeping the emo out. Definitely some. No, I mean, definitely part of the current American black metal we found. The current of American black metal we started tapping into this year. Definitely, some of it is defined by embracing the emo influence, and I think that's fine. But like pentatonic scale for sure. It's interesting you hear the emo is related to pentatonic stuff. I always associated it more with sort of like, just like very, very like core kind of major minor chord progression sounds. Like playing the root notes of chord progressions is how I associate emo, what I associate those melodies with. But like,
I mean, in terms of the harmonic ideas, yeah, but I think the core melodic stuff, I mean, I think of emo as an elaboration on blues in a lot of ways, which might kind of express a lot of things we've been talking about off air about black metal.
Yeah, that's weird. I'll have to think about that. I don't hear it that way at all. It's sort of like, well, obviously emotionally they're on such opposite ends of the spectrum, but we're now arguing about things that aren't or talking about things that are not Inquisition. So
fair enough.
So like as far as that sample, right? It's got that like hard rock quality.
Yeah, definitely.
That comes in. The sort of, well, we already touched on that. Let's go. We got sidetracked. Let's go to the next sample. So, yeah, there's this cool hard rock work in the guitar. There's this colors of emo, and it seems like, as you say, he's been learning new guitar things. It's like one thing that defines Inquisition is that he has always had this like microcellular composition approach. Mm-hmm. Where he's got particular kinds, even from the very beginning, there are certain specific kinds of riffs that he'll repeat even within a record. But he'll do these subtle variations on them. And at the beginning, it's like there are maybe 3 or 4 kinds of Inquisition riffs.
Yeah.
And each song has these like iterations of these, rearrangements of them.
Well, yeah, we've talked about the idea of having like black metal guitars having phrases that they are obsessed with, you know?
Yeah, and
that are sort of defining parts of themselves as a person.
Yeah, and at the beginning it sounds a little more like Hell's Bells is the thing I'd really connect with Inquisition, like sort of pentatonic shifting into Dorian scale, kind of blues, but also related to that sort of ancient reptile-brained European music.
Yeah.
Kind of quality, you know, blues played by Australian thugs, played by a Colombian black metal dude. It had that sort of like droning blues quality, but also really epic. And then he starts picking up, I think, around those middle records, he starts picking up more conventional black metalisms from various places. And those all kind of stay in the mix too. And then on Obscure Verses for the Multiverse, he starts bringing in more of that kind of glistening sound.
Yeah, definitely.
And more of the hard rock. You just get, I mean, he always had moments that sounded just frankly bluesy, but you get things that are straight blues bends.
Well,
right?
Live, Dagon usually sound checks with Back in Black by AC/DC.
Well, there guitar. You go. That's fucking sick. So, here's some more new guitar techniques getting picked up or embraced, which is like, my spirit shall join a constellation of swords.
Probably the coolest song title of the year.
I would probably have to agree, pound for pound. It's just, and this is, you'll hear definitely also very rocky, but almost like folk rocky. And there's some really,
definitely,
yeah, some cool dramatic change-ups in this.
All right, let's try it.
Spirit of the cult arise.
Flames form as a throne, man.
Yeah, so I think you all could hear probably the extreme folkiness at the beginning of that. That almost sounded like you had this kind of Celtic medieval quality, but also like you've mentioned it before, sort of like 60s psychedelic folk in connection with things, almost like a Donovan kind of quality, like tripped out hard rock folk.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, the thing that I keep bringing up is Bob Dylan, but actually the thing that I want to bring up there, especially on the very last part of that, and this is going to be very left field, would be like Bruce Springsteen.
Ugh.
What do you mean? Excuse me. What do you mean? Ugh.
I'm anti-Springsteen, man.
You're anti-Springsteen?
Yes.
One of the most vital artists of American rock music ever?
Yeah.
We're gonna fight about this one, man.
What I would... Yeah, I mean... The last riff to me is very classic Inquisition. You could have heard that riff on any of the first couple records, and it's that big characteristic, like, power chord, 1 octave minor seventh, like which he does pretty much better than anyone. But like I love how it goes from this kind of loose, open, kind of just like expansive and groovy folk vibe into just hammer, bang, bang, ba-da-dang, dang, da-da-dang, dang, dang, da-dang. But it still has this folky feel. It's like sort of, drunk peasant festival.
Because if you listen to AC/DC under the right conditions, it sounds like folk music. It sounds like drunk peasant festival music.
Which it really just is. Right?
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
like it's and that's why I relate it to something like Springsteen. It's like Springsteen is an elaboration on that, influenced by Queen and some prog rock and shit like that. But the core of it really relates to like American folk music, which I would call Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, very early Eric Clapton works with, Cream and stuff like that. I think you can't talk about Inquisition without relating it to that.
I get that. I just don't like how the things that Bruce Springsteen plays sound. That's mostly my feeling.
Oh, dude. Well, I mean, are you into? I mean, do you like Queen?
No.
Oh, Jesus, man. Queen is the most black metal of AOR bands.
Oh God, I hate good times. I'm sorry, but I mean, I might be old and dumb enough now to like Queen, or wait, you were saying Queen or Kiss?
Queen.
Yeah, I really hate Queen. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking of Kiss, but I was thinking like Bruce Springsteen influenced by Kiss. All right, so it's getting late at Terminus HQ, and we are getting loopy. So we're on to the next sample, A Glorious Shadow from Fire and Ashes. This is just another new idea he's picked up, which is fits right in, but you'll hear how it's new. This is one of the more driving or riffy parts on the record.
So it's interesting how you describe it in the notes as kind of like a raga thing.
Yeah.
Because I hear that as extremely Celtic, and obviously the linking thing is primeval Indo-European music.
Whatever it sounded like. What we imagine it must have sounded like.
Well,
yes.
I mean, the pentatonic scale is a core thing of Western and Asian music. You know?
Also a core thing of Malian blues guitar, right? So it's...
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. No, it all ties together.
But it's, it's the shift. It's the sort of, it's not so much the pentatonic feel, it's the shift between, within one kind of melodic idea, a shift between minor and major sounding intervals. And it creates a different kind of tension. That's a thing that you can relate back to the 60s and hard rock stuff. I mean, the Beatles did shit like that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I'm like the one person who likes the Beatles songs where they let George Harrison play sitar. Those are my favorites. But like, I don't know, what's a good example of this in hard rock? Heavy dissonant sounding major scales in rock music, as opposed to like, say, Morbid Angel or whatever, would be something like
probably like George Thorogood or something like that. You know,
for sure. Oh, this Inquisition is a lot like George Thorogood, and I like George Thorogood a lot.
Yes. Which is also very AC/DC. You know?
Yeah, for sure. But that kind, I was thinking like Silverfuck by the Smashing Pumpkins is a good example of someone using kind of like raga major scale in a kind of drony way in a rock song.
Like a lot of stuff off Siamese Dream would be. I mean, just like Lover's Rock is very like kind of raga on that main riff. Or like even like Pixies, stuff like that would have some of those melodic ideas.
Yeah, so like we'll move through your last sample, and then I think we can just talk about this being so rocky.
Oh, definitely. Which is something that Inquisition has always been, but everyone's just figuring it out now. So this is off a track called "Hymn to the Absolute Majesty of Darkness and Fire." And I think this might be my favorite song on the album. This is a long fucking album. This is almost 70 minutes long. But it really works all together. So let's listen to kind of the back half, or the back third of this track.
The
We were talking while I was playing about the idea of the emo on this record, which is something that pops up not just on these samples. It's kind of across the record. Now, realistically, I don't think Dagon listens to emo. I think he's arriving at it through listening to classic rock and extending it into this more sentimental territory, which is how a lot of original emo guys got there. So I think it's a case of parallel evolution.
And also, like, well, you know, given that his method is this intense minimalism,
yeah,
this is so what emo has always struck me as is like do 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 do, you know, like that last little out fade out, right? That sounded really emo. If you just take basic bar chords and just play, like, you know, arpeggios on them, like moving up and down and using the sort of chord shifts to create melodic quality, like do 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 do. I'm singing off key there, but like,
well, you get to a lot of early emo ideas that way.
Exactly. So if you're stripping down, if you're taking color out of hard rock chords and out of these if you're taking these rockish chord progressions and taking out some of the color that would make them sound more bluesy or more psyche or more whatever, and they're just getting pared down to the arpeggios, but they still have this rockish chord structure, maybe then you get the emo. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, because I think it ties into this idea I'm trying to talk about. Is like, you know, and I think we've talked around it about, you know, what makes American black metal. Well, American black metal ties into American classic rock and emo, and I think a lot of American emo just ties into, again, American classic rock. I think it's an elaboration off a lot of those kind of chord ideas.
I hadn't heard emo in relation to classic rock at all. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we've been talking.
I just thought of it as this sort of vulgarization of punk. that's the teenager in me speaking, but
no, I get that. Well,
specifically about the really poppy. Obviously, we're not talking about like Scrams bands or whatever. But
yeah,
like
yeah,
the really poppy emo. Yeah.
But I mean, what is, you know? You know, you're talking about this vulgarization of punk. Well, remember when we were talking about Cimetiere? I mean, what is punk but a vulgarization of, especially for American punk, a vulgarization of early American blues, Elvis, Bob Dylan, and, you know, like early American folk ideas, in a way.
That's
extensions off of extensions, you know?
I could, yeah. I mean, I don't think, I think a lot of punk was reacting against that. How successfully it did that is another question. A band like, you see, with the Cemetery, you go back to the Ramones more than me. So, like, the Ramones really tie into that rock and roll and blues and Springsteen tradition.
Definitely.
For sure. But yeah, I mean, so I could, yeah, you can hear how emo relates to the Ramones, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I think I certainly am with you on the pentatonic scale for American black metal, and I certainly think that, and on those sort of hard rock influence, just the general swagger. I think hard rock and country seems relevant to this record.
Oh yeah,
right? Like
country definitely.
If you take I mean, especially to that first sample you pulled, that seemed really country to me, specifically when you said cowboy.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we talked about that with, like, Mortem and Oldemont Gash and stuff like that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's definitely a through line there, is this kind of country feel. And, you know, obviously country has some of the sentimentality you'd associate with emo, too, and some of the bluesy chords you'd associate with hard rock. I always thought grunge was a big thing, too. And although Inquisition sounds nothing like grunge, they definitely do have big sort of chest-thumping power chord riffs, right?
Well, remember that Nirvana was heavily influenced by Celtic Frost, man.
Interesting. There is that one video of them playing Onward into Countless Battles by Unleashed.
Oh, no. Kurt Cobain was a giant fan of Celtic Frost, and he said that was a fundamental influence to what he was doing in Nirvana.
Interesting. That does kind of, it makes sense.
Yeah, it scans, yeah.
So I mean, what else? So about this record structurally, what's interesting about it is that this is by far the spaciest thing Inquisition have ever done.
It's very chilled out. Yeah, it's this is not a record too hard to listen to. This is a record to chill out and do your housework to, which is again not knocking it because there's a space for stuff like that, you know?
I think it's, well, it's also a very long record. Kind of this, remember when we talked with Serpent Column, he was talking about his frustration with short attention span music.
Yeah.
This is an hour and 4 minutes or 5 minutes long. I don't know if it really feels like a double. It might be a double LP. There's a sort of quick interlude in the middle.
It would be a double LP, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, basically he kind of does his own you know what he's doing? Tying it back to what you said about Rain and Blood earlier. He's inverted the Rain and Blood formula. He's put bangers, which people associate with Inquisition, at the beginning and the end. And then the middle is just very kind of mellow and expansive. And I do feel that if you go back to, I think it will reward repeat listens. Like, I think the middle kind of all flows together in this sort of wash of, but the more you listen to it, the more, and it's kind of how every Inquisition record is, but the more you listen to it, the more you'll start picking out stuff that really is memorable, I think.
Yeah.
Also, should be noted that the first Spirit of the Black Star sounds like some of their earliest records, and Luciferian Rays, the single, is just remarkable in itself.
Yeah, it's a great single track. Yeah.
Really good. That has the tightness and drive and the steamroller quality of early Inquisition, or of the stuff. It's kind of like stuff on Obscure Verses, but it's but has that kind of wildly sentimental quality in some of the chords. Just really rich chords, and you were talking about what he was doing with the guitar technique there, sort of.
Yeah, it's very, like, left-hand bending, dramatic stuff. I've been seeing people talk about this record online. It's like, oh, he's using the tremolo bar too much. No, that's not what's occurring at all. Thank you. It's literally just, left-hand technique. Because I think this guy, like, for instance, Trey Azagtote, is much more influenced by Jimi Hendrix than other black metal guitarists.
That makes sense. Yeah, we still need to do a Jimi Hendrix bonus episode.
Yeah, we should.
And, because you've talked about him a lot, and I now need to go back and revisit that. But the left-hand bendy stuff has always been a really important part of his technique. And something I've always liked about it is very live, physical guitar playing. Here, and I feel like since Obscure Verses, he's taken these things that were dressing on the early songs, like the left-hand bends, or like these moments of more kind of shimmery guitar, and he's really placed those more and more at the center in a pretty interesting way.
Yeah, because those are the defining qualities of Inquisition.
Of this record, for sure. Of late Inquisition, yeah. I agree. It's, and he manages, pretty consistently. This is not a wimpy record. It's just not concerned with that sort of bang your head through a wall feeling of a lot of their other stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty, it's ambitious, it's risky. And the other thing I wanted to say about this in relation to their discography, like, we haven't talked about Bloodshed Across the Empyrean Altar Beyond the Celestial Zenith at all.
Which it wasn't a record that stuck out to me, really.
I agree. That's probably their weakest album, and I think what was happening there was they were aiming to write a, quote, normal extreme metal record.
Yeah.
And they're not a bad band. They gave a good whack at it, but like the kind of songs they produced there are just sort of like more like Behemoth or whatever. And then it's like, Inquisition is not a normal band. Inquisition has always been a weird band. And so how do you come back? make something that's like more mature and expansive than your early stuff, while also not making something like super commercial?
Yeah.
Maybe you record this sprawling, sort of heartfelt hard rock black metal anthem.
Yeah.
You know, it's because this will throw some people for a loop, I think.
Oh, definitely, I could see that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, New Inquisition, great record. So, you have an idea for a closer, or do you need me
Yeah,
to?
we were talking about Japanese black metal earlier. What are we in the mood for? Are you thinking more sort of like Oh, well, we've been talking about really unhinged stuff on this show, right?
Yeah.
So let's keep it with I was thinking of doing Hakuja. I'll get to that some other time. But let's go to a forgotten cult deep cut from the early 2000s, which is Arkha. And this is a Japanese band that was quite popular for a minute and was, as soon as you'll hear this, you'll understand A, why it's awesome, and B, why it is way too bizarre to have caught on immediately. But maybe we can get some Arkha revival now.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, cool. And this is, I'm just going to play 49 Evil Spirits off the beginning of Gloria Satanae.
What a sick title.
Yeah.
Whenever you have, like, just a weird arbitrary number in a title, it's always cool.
Dude, 7 times 7, that's not arbitrary at all.
Oh, that's true. All right. So
all right.
let's listen to Arkha, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks a lot for listening.
Right. Later.
The fucking